about to join Don Neuen, co-host of Cowboy Logic Radio, and Denise Simon, host of the Denise Simon Experience, for a weekly situation report, or SITREP. 18 hours a day, Denise Simon lives her life as an Intel Analyst. 18 hours a day, Don Neuen lives his life in the world of rock and roll. 1 hour each day, Neuen receives a daily SITREP from Simon. Welcome to the Drive Time Situation Report. Fasten your seatbelt. You're now in Don Neuen's car, and he is calling in for his SITREP.
Hello.
What's up, Denise Simon? It's your buddy Don Neuen calling in for this week's riveting episode of the Drive Time Situation Report, or Drive Time SITREP. Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome you to the really big show. My name's Don Neuen. You've got on the other end of this conversation one Denise Simon. I am in my car driving home from work late at night on, well, Denise is going to timestamp it here in a minute, but we're bringing you along for the ride. This is a unique radio show unlike any that you will ever hear, because I, again, am in my car calling Denise Simon for a nightly situation report, something I do on average of 5 nights a week. Why, you ask? Because Denise Simon spends 18 hours a day in the world as an intelligence analyst, as an Intel analyst. I, on the other hand, spend 18 hours a day in the world of rock and roll. I don't have time to read the Associated Press or scan through the Drudge Report or get on Facebook or Twitter for any kind of fake news I might be looking for. I have to spend my day in rock and roll. So what do? I count on my sister from another mister, Denise Simon, to be able to bring me up to speed, make me appear more intelligent, and brief me on everything that has gone on that's of any importance throughout the day. So without any further ado, let's get after it. Denise Simon, I hope you had a wonderful day. Mine was rather intense, but for the time being, for the next 50 minutes and 17 seconds, let's talk about situation reports. What happened today, Denise? But timestamp it first.
8:55 p.m. Eastern Standard, and it is the 24th of October in the year of our Lord 2017.
Beautiful. Could not have done it better if I had not coached you for an entire month to do it that way.
Oh, shut up.
All right, so Denise, I must be candid with you and the listeners. At about 8:20 this evening, while I was at my office, I received a Denise Simon update in my inbox, and you had posted another article for the day. This one had to do with the DNC, Hillary Clinton, and the dossier. So would you like to start there, or would you like to start someplace else?
No, that's absolutely fine. And what's particularly interesting, it was the Washington Post that broke this story. Now, I subscribe to email updates from the Washington Post. I do not subscribe to the Washington Post because I don't pay for that stuff. And furthermore, that's the single largest media outlet that hates Trump. I mean, everything that comes out of there. And I think, too, I've been meaning to do this for months, but some of their journalists operate under fake names. So nobody can necessarily track them
I wouldn't doubt that. Now, you have mentioned in the past, though, when you have cited the Washington Post, that there are a few good eggs over there.
Yeah.
Is that not the case anymore, or do you still have a handful?
Well, I think that, there are some good journalists, and there are some journalists out there that do their work and then they contribute to the Washington Post. So it's kind of a mixed bag, but for the most part, the top 10 headlines of the day are anti-Trump headlines. So I have to weed through some of them and determine whether I really want to go this far. But having said all that, this particular story was broken by the Washington Post. It was a little suspect at the beginning because it was so in your face. And I had to kind of wait for some other media sources to validate it, and they did. So once I got that, I ran with it. And I'm gonna.
All right. Well, hey, for the sake of the listeners that did not sign up for your email, and each and every one of you that have not done that, I cannot express using the spoken word how disappointed I am. Now, in order to relieve this level of disappointment with me, simply go to founderscode.com. Founderscode.com. That is Denise's personal website. On there, you can sign up for her daily and sometimes multi-daily newsletters. They come to you in an email. You can pick and choose whichever ones you want. But I got to tell you, the level of disappointment in you people that have not signed up for this yet is epic. So please take care of that so that I can expel this feeling of disdain that I have at this very moment for those of you that have not done that. How was that, Denise? Was that poignant?
Excellent.
Hey, Tom Del Beccaro told me tonight that he was very impressed that I knew how to spell the word gnome, like a yard gnome, like the Travelocity gnome.
Did you start off with a G?
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah. Because I made a little smart aleck comment on one of his. Oh, you did see it?
I did.
Okay. Did you see that he was impressed?
Yeah.
Did you see that he verbally abuses me as if I was a liberal?
Well, if you kind of leave yourself out there, that's kind of the things that are going to happen, huh?
Well, listen, I expect that kind of stuff out of people that I don't know, that are not dear friends, that are not somehow connected in some kind of a, family tree of some kind. I mean, he's Italian, Donna's Italian, somehow they're got to be connected. Mm. And, I really felt like I needed a safe space and some back team to deal with the wounds and the abuse that Tom Del Beccaro was inflicting on me publicly.
All right, so you trotted on over here to the Denise Simon sandbox.
No, I did not. I'm doing the SITREP. Now let's get after it. Enough of my silliness.
Well, having said all that, and I'm going to preface this by saying that I have 2 mints in my mouth because where this took me tonight put a very bad taste in my mouth. So if you hear me smacking, you're going to have to deal with it until I get rid of this Hillary Clinton taste in my mouth. All right.
Okay.
Having said that.
All right.
Okay. Now.
Hey, why am I hearing an echo of myself?
I have no idea.
Okay, well, I don't hear it now. I just don't want the listeners to have to put up with that.
No, you sound good.
Thank you very much.
We have a law firm in Washington, D.C. by the name of Perkins & Coie. And it is a I started to say well-respected. I guess for government purposes it is. But it's a very, very large law firm. And one of the partners at Perkins & Coie is a fellow by the name of Mark Elias. Now, Mark Elias is an interesting character because I just was kind of checking out his little background. He's a full-blown Obama, Hillary, John Kerry commie acolyte. But having said that...
Al Franken.
Yeah. Having said that, Hillary hired him, the Hillary presidential campaign, what are they called? The exploratory committees or something?
Right.
Went ahead and hired him almost immediately. Because prior to that, Mark Elias worked for the John Kerry presidential campaign as well as the Al Franken campaign. And he's done some work for the DNC. All right. So, having said all that, we have this dossier that we keep hearing about. Well, I don't know how many people actually read that dossier. What was it, 23 pages, or I forget now. That was like so last year. But anyway, there are some things in that dossier that are true. 2%, 3%, 5%, whatever the number is, but some things, and so that's a Russian tactic. That is a KGB tactic. Put in truthful stuff along with the false stuff, so you necessarily would think that the false stuff may be so outrageous, but there has to be some shred of truth in the false stuff, so then you kind of have this thing, well, the majority of this thing must be, pretty true. Now, it turns out a Republican, we don't know who this is, originally hired Fusion GPS to do opposition research on Donald Trump. This was very, very early on in the campaign. We don't know who it is. But they found out necessarily, I guess, what they needed to know, and they just stopped. They said, okay, we got enough. We don't need any more. But apparently people know people, so the connection was made between the Hillary camp and this Mark Elias, Perkins, and Coe that said, hey, we've got the beginnings of this dossier here, or opposition research here. Would you like us to go a little bit further? And it was like, yeah, let's do that. And the original part of the opposition research dealt with the connections that Trump had with Russians. And he has a lot of them, or had a lot of them. I think the Trump Corporation may still have some. And those are beyond denial. Now, I think at this point, we have this
hold on a second, Denise. I, for one, as a businessman, don't have any problem with Trump having connections and relationships with Russians if it is done in business and if it is done above board. Now, clearly, there have been things you and I have been talking about for months on this SITREP program that have nothing to do with being above board and having any type of integrity. But, Burger King's over there and McDonald's over there. There's plenty of big companies, just like Trump's, that are doing business over there, right?
Yes, but a lot of the Russians that Donald Trump had some kind of relationship with, and they are various types of relationships. They could have been just a mere real estate relationship. It could have been a business relationship. It may have been a finance relationship. They have variables. But having said that, some of them were pretty dark people. Felix Sater being one. That there was some money laundering that was going on. But having said that, this was all done.
Did you like how I set you up to say that?
Okay, good job.
That was all a setup. I set you up to say that because I felt that it was important that you expressed that, and you weren't going there.
Well, don't underestimate me now, okay?
Well, I don't. But as with Donna Fiducia, I'm the colorization guy, right?
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
So
look at me as like I'm Lynn Swan.
Yeah. All right. So we have these relationships. We have these relationships, and there were a lot of them. But all this was done way before Trump ever even became a candidate. And some other relationships occurred because he became a candidate with Russian oligarchs and dark people and things that, went through some weird places like Cyprus and, some other kind of locations across the globe. But having said that, the Perkins Coe, Mark Elias fellow said, this is kind of interesting. We know that the Hillary operation has interesting relationships with the Russians. So let's just kind of dismiss all that and we'll exploit the whole Trump thing in the Russians. So we have a misplaced, in some cases, label of collusion, if you will. Collusion now may take on a whole different definition. But having said that, the Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee picked up the initial opposition research on Donald Trump and ran with it and then created this dossier through Fusion GPS and Christopher Steele. Now, Christopher Steele, we're all going to say, well, where's the FBI and why didn't they have this figured out? We got to back up here. Christopher Steele had a previous relationship with the FBI, and it was a good relationship because he was the one who broke the fraud and the corruption of FIFA, the soccer committee, if you will, the Global Soccer Committee. And there was a lot of bad things that were going on there, and we remember that the United States took some very aggressive action on some of the people inside of FIFA, as did some other countries. Interestingly enough, however, FIFA is holding their World Cup in one of the more corrupt countries in the world in 2018, and that is Qatar. Having said that, the information that Richard Steele gave to the FBI and to the Department of Justice on FIFA was correct. So there was at least that one previous relationship. So when Richard Steele has this information via Fusion GPS on this dossier, and it gets to the FBI of James Comey era said, so James Comey did a 2-page summary of what was in the dossier. He did not hand anybody the dossier, but did a 2-page summary in exactly the same document. He handed it to Obama and he handed it to Trump. And therein began the bad blood between Trump and Comey. Now, the FBI was still running down all of the little things that were in the dossier. And that took them globally. Again, some of it was accurate, some of it not so much.
All right, hold on a second. Hold on. I thought that John McCain had his fingers in this dossier.
I know.
Or is
Everybody
this something
likes
else.
No.
I mean, you and I talked about it.
Okay.
Was he involved in it at all?
Not like everybody thinks. Okay. The FBI already had the dossier, and a copy of the dossier was being passed around. I don't want to say the world because it wasn't the world, but between Britain and the United States. A contact, because he sits on the he's chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, contacted in Britain and said, hey, we have this dossier here. We think you need to take a look at it. You guys might be in some trouble. So the dossier was sent then to John McCain. John McCain reads it and he can't even believe it. So then he has a runner, if you will, that takes the dossier and delivers it to the FBI. The FBI already had it, but it was important because now it says to the FBI, "Oh my God, this thing's being passed around in places we hadn't even thought of." You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Now hold the thought. What about when this first all came to the surface? There was Italian intelligence agencies that were involved in this. What's the story on that?
I don't know. I can't speak to that. I don't know anything about Italian intelligence.
You told me about it.
I don't know that I did.
Yeah, I think so. All right. Back to what you were saying, though.
Okay. Sorry. I don't know anything about Italian intelligence. So if I did, then I must have been nuts, or I'm nuts right now and can't remember. All right. So Steele, when he worked for the British intelligence, he already had a relationship with the Russians, which made it even better for the Hillary. Now, I would also argue, concurrent to all of this, we probably have a lot of the machinery that was going on with Uranium One and the other Russian organization that Hillary brought into the tech people out there in California, Skolkovo, okay? Because I would say that this was, Hillary had to start covering up for Uranium One, and she had to start covering her tracks for the Skolkovo thing that went into, Tech Valley out there in California. Okay, so here we are. We don't know how much money that was paid to or from Fusion GPS or to Richard Steele or who paid it. And the investigative committees in Congress are trying to find that out. We had 2 of the people from Fusion GPS that have given congressional testimony, and their congressional testimony began and ended with, "I'm taking the 5th." So they didn't get anything out of that. So the congressional committee said, okay, then we're going to subpoena your bank records. And now the Fusion GPS has gone to the court to get an injunction such that the banks will not release any of the bank records so they can see who paid what to whom. So here we are.
How could that even stand? How could that injunction get any legs?
Well, we don't know. We have to see what a judge says, We don't know.
And what liberal circuit court did they take that to?
Well, you got one sitting right over there in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Now, it gets kind of interesting because the Clinton campaign paid Perkins & Coie, the law firm, $5.6 million in legal fees from June of 2015 to December of 2016. And the DNC paid Perkins & Coie $3.6 million. So what do we have here? We have $8.9 million. That's a lot of money. A lot of money.
I thought my legal fees were high.
So now we have this situation, and I'm going to say that maybe in this case, remember that Trump fired Comey. We're not quite sure, because nobody is really telling us, and we haven't gotten to the bottom of it, why he really fired Comey. Because now we have a situation here where the collusion piece has necessarily been attached to both sides now, which I would call, I don't want to call it a constitutional crisis, because the two top nominees for president are both have these nefarious Russian connections. But I would say maybe we have some other kinds of deceptions here, particularly on the Hillary side, right? Right.
Listen, in your opinion, based on digesting all of this information, who had more nefarious ties to Russia, more corrupt ties to Russia, more deceitful ties to Russia, more damaging ties to Russia? Trump or Hillary Clinton?
Well, Trump's ties to Russia were for his business. And, it may have involved money laundering, but it had nothing to do with politics or national security or any of those kinds of things. Or I would say politics. See what I'm saying? This was all essentially personal to his business. What Hillary was doing, both at the Clinton Foundation, through the State Department, through the FBI, through the CIA, through, law enforcement, she and the DNC essentially punked all of those intelligence committees with this dossier, including the FBI. Think about that for a minute.
Well, what I'm thinking about for a minute is, at what point will these people be held accountable? I say it every week.
This only broke. I mean, you gotta be patient here. This only broke like 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago.
I get that. I get that. But you've
okay,
broken things before.
I'm not through with the bombshells yet.
All right. Well, hold on. Hold the thought. Ladies and gentlemen, come on. That's the big tease. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Drive Time Situation Report. You've got Denise Simon that's dangling a carrot, or in my case, a filet mignon, because, man, that's a dangle. My name is Don Neuen. We both have our own shows each week. The Denise Simon Experience, Thursday night at 9 o'clock. Cowboy Logic Radio, Tuesday night at 9 o'clock on the Talk America Radio network. But once a week, we bring you along for the ride. I'm in my car. You can probably hear the background noise. I'm on I-20 I'm doing 80 miles an hour, Denise. Headed west on my way home. I'm flowing with traffic, though, I'm passing Douglasville. Anyhow, we bring you along for the ride. This is a show unlike any other. Again, I'm in my car holding my iPhone up so I don't lose signal. Denise is in her bunker in Tampa, Florida. And we're bringing you along for the ride to experience what I get to experience every night of the week. And that's a situation report from the wonderful Denise Simon. So let's get back to it. No commercials, just me babbling every once in a while. Back to you, Denise.
Now, there's a big rumor that the FBI paid Fusion GPS and or Richard Steele for this dossier. That they did enter into an agreement because of some other connections that Richard Steele had into Russian intelligence, if you will, Russian ties. But they backed out of that deal. So to clarify the record, the FBI never paid anybody. Got to say that. All right, moving on. We now have Paul Manafort. And this old boy is in some deep doo-doo. Now, we know that he had some pretty nefarious connections coming in that were kind of bubbling to the surface, I should say. And with that, in those nefarious connections, they certainly dealt with the Ukraine. Remember the president of Ukraine, Yanukovych, whatever his name was, he bailed out and essentially defected and found safe haven in Russia. Well, Paul Manafort created a operation. Let me get my notes here on another piece of paper. He created an operation called the European Center for a Modern Ukraine, based in Belgium, but there was no address in Belgium. There was just a phone number in Belgium, but when you called that phone number, it actually rang in Ukraine. Paul Manafort, we don't know when or for how long, but he was also on the payroll of the Podesta Group, John and Tony. So he worked for...
Are you serious?
Uh-huh. Yes.
Think about that for a minute, people. Wow.
Yes, wow. Yes, wow. And the Podesta Group was working in collusion with the Clinton Foundation, which I would add probably included the cover-up and the workings of the Uranium One deal. I can't prove it, but my gut tells me so, given how the dates line up.
So let me ask you this. At what point do you think that Trump learned that Manafort was working with Podesta and the Clinton Foundation?
I'm not convinced he knew.
Because that has got to be a massive burr in his saddle.
Well, he's about to find out if he didn't know. Furthermore, there was a girl that was hired by the...
Because my understanding is that he tunes into the Drive Time SITREP every night to check out what's going on.
All right. Cool beans.
You didn't know that, did you?
I did not.
All right, another bombshell. Let's go.
So the Podesta Group, mostly for Tony, not John. Tony apparently has quite the art collection. And apparently, whether this art collection is real or not, he has a girl on the payroll that does nothing but manage the art collection. And I always kept wondering why I kept getting these FBI updates that, we have a division in the FBI that just does nothing but tracks down stolen art, fraudulent art, and this kind of stuff. Now I'm beginning to understand why, because that's where you hide money. And the art collection transactions could conceal the financial transactions. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All right. So then I decided, okay, I'll look at that. So then I trotted on over, and I just now finished, to the foreign, whatever the heck it is. What is it? The Foreign Agents Registration Act. And I decided to see what kind of filings that the Podesta Group has done, which is required by law, on their filings with the Foreign Registrations Act. Well, this is just absolutely fascinating, because the Podesta Group had or has, because I didn't look at all the expiration dates, relationships with the Saudi Royal Court, with the Republic Union of Myanmar, Republic of India, the Democratic Party of Moldova, Azerbaijan, South Sudan, Kosovo, Hong Kong, Republic of Iraq, Embassy of Japan, Kenya, South Korea, the Social Republic of Vietnam, and there's nothing that I can find there that has anything to do with Ukraine or Russia.
Yeah.
That's a big That one has me just a little on the curious side.
So what did Denise Simon do?
Well, I literally wrote it down 20 minutes ago, so I haven't even gotten that far yet. I am not convinced I can go through all of this, but we also have another person by the name of Mark Tavlarides. Well, Mark Tavlarides was a former staffer for the Bill Clinton's National Security Council, and he actually worked as a National Security Legislative Director during the Clinton administration. Well, he works for the Podesta Group. So when it comes to national, you see where I'm going with this? Because he would know what you should be doing and not be doing as well, because especially he was the congressional liaison with the do's and don'ts with countries like those that I just named, including Russia.
Hey, remind me to ask you when you get done with this. if you get done with it, and I say that with admiration. Remind me to get into how these schmucks are going to spin this so they slide off of it like some as seen on TV skillet pan. Okay?
Oh, the copper thingy? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when we're all done with this, I want to know how they're going to get away with it and emerge unscathed, because that's what always happens.
Well, now let's trot on over to Robert Mueller, because everybody is supposed to hate Robert Mueller because Sean Hannity tells us to, and because the American Center for Law and Justice tells us that we're supposed to hate Robert Mueller and his investigations that he is doing on the Russian meddling and the Russian collusion with Donald Trump, correct? Well, everything that the man necessarily and his team is necessarily touching is not exclusive to Donald Trump. I'm just telling you that, because he is also...
Well, I would hope not. I would hope not.
Well, it's a fact. And what
I
think what he's necessarily finding is whatever wrongs Trump did not do it as part of his campaign and to torpedo the election system, but Hillary did. And as a consequence, he's been sending out subpoenas to several prominent Washington lobby firms. And they included those like Mike Flynn, Paul Manafort, this person that I just said to you, Mark Tavlarides, Mercury Public Affairs, the SGR LLC, whoever that is. And then we have things like this European Center for a Modern Ukraine that is supposed to be in Belgium, but it's not. I'm sorry, in Brussels. Well, that's Belgium. And then I would also say certainly the Podesta Group. So I think that Mueller has kept a very tight control on what is coming out. What does come out is not coming out from his group. It's probably coming out from those that are receiving subpoenas. And
how did this whole revelation come out 2 hours ago? Who dumped this into the Washington Post?
You mean the thing about the dossier?
Yeah.
There were several that actually worked on that. So it isn't just a single journalist that did it. There were several.
All right. And how much of this information, in your opinion, that they have disclosed in this headline, in this breaking news, would have potentially come from the FBI?
I don't think any of it came from the FBI.
Then why did it take them so long to come up with it?
Because I think they're going through all of the other points of contact and not through the FBI.
Okay. That makes sense.
I think that there are people that are necessarily... Yeah, I mean, I think there are people inside the Clinton camp that are, being kind of duped into saying some things. And I think the same thing is happening with the DNC. That this stuff is getting out. You take somebody out for dinner and you feed them enough drinks, you can probably get a lot of interesting things out of them.
Right. All right. Are there any other bombshells? Are there any other bombshells that are connected with this?
Well, no, but I would say that the fact that Paul Manafort was on the payroll, and again, we don't know how long. I mean, he could have been on the payroll for the Podesta Group while he was over there, hanging out in Trump Tower. So,
how do we find out? How do we find out when he was on the payroll and how much he ended up earning?
I will try and work on that, but I have to requires necessarily open source, or the fact that I could get a hold of a journalist or two and ask them one or two questions and see if they would even answer it. But
all right. Well, if there are no more bombshells on this, how do you see? Because what you just discussed for the last 30 minutes seems to be awfully damning to Hillary Clinton, the DNC, Paul Manafort, and some of these other characters that you mentioned. How do you see them skating out of this like Lois Lerner did with the IRS scandal?
Well, there were a couple of committees today that announced that they were, in fact, they've formally opened the investigation, probably through the Trade Gowdy Oversight Committee, into the Uranium One deal. And they probably don't have really too far to go because Senator Barrasso, he has known about it for at least 2 years and had been sending letter after letter after letter requests to the Department of Justice and to associated people, like, we want the documents on this. So the fact that Uranium One might be new to us, it's at least 2 years old, if not more, to some members of the Senate. Now, when Peter Schweitzer got this information such that he wrote his book, Clinton Cash, I don't know. And where he got that information, I don't know. But all
right, so let me ask you this. Do you think anybody's tapping Peter Schweitzer on the shoulder and going, hey, give us a hand here? Or is there not a need to tap him on the shoulder now?
I don't think there's necessarily a need to do that here at this point. They've probably got, what he has, I think he put it all in. He went all in on his book. People might be kind of coming up with some interesting things here lately, but I think that the whistleblowers now are necessarily coming out of the woodwork, whether they have, non-disclosure agreements or not. They may be, sending notes or doing phone calls or, doing dead drop kind of things to get some of this information out.
Well, hey, let me ask you about an NDA, okay, which is a non-disclosure agreement.
Mm-hmm.
If I signed a non-disclosure agreement and I found out that I was suppressing or protecting illegal activity, I would struggle greatly with my ability to adhere to my non-disclosure agreement, because I then would struggle with the fact that I'm not doing the right thing. What is the law, if you know, what does the law say about breaching or violating an NDA when the information that you are privy to or that you learn about or discover is illegal activity?
You'd have to go back to the person that you signed it with, and you'd have to sue them and go to court. And you probably could necessarily win with enough evidence. But I will say this: you are dealing with some huge nefarious power brokers in Washington, D.C. And I would say that death could be upon you, or financial destruction could be upon you, if you even attempted to do that with some of these players. So it would be a financial ruin, life and death decision, especially when you're dealing with some of these people that you're dealing with, like with the Hillary people.
All right, well, name those people. Name the people that, if you cross them, you're dealing with a financial ruin or a life or death situation. John Podesta?
Yeah.
His art collecting wife?
Well, it was Tony Podesta's art collection, and some girl by the name, I don't forget her name.
Well, I'm assuming Tony is his wife, right?
No, Tony's his brother.
Okay, all right. Well, is John married, and is his wife nefarious as well?
Could be. I have no idea. Could be.
All right, so Tony's a guy. See, here's the problem, Denise. I have been beat up so badly by liberals for this gender-neutral crap. I just assumed that it was Tony, T-O-N-I.
Okay, I get it, I guess.
Yeah. All right, well, okay. Clearly, Hillary, the Clintons are clearly a death wish if you cross them, and a financial ruin wish.
Yeah, we can go back to Arkansas, and we can probably count some bodies, out of Arkansas.
Of course we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I would also say that we can't forget, we got this Peter Smith guy who allegedly was colluding with Mike Flynn in order to do the hacking to see if they couldn't get into some kind of, servers or emails or that kind of thing. He was an older guy, but let's not forget he's dead. And then you got my kind of distant buddy, Bill Browder, who knows obviously a lot of, and not by his choice, but he's come to know some pretty shady people out of the Kremlin, of which his own attorney was murdered in prison. And how many Russians have been whistleblowers that have died of strange chemicals, Yeah.
Okay. I mean, clearly there's a trail of death. Clearly.
Yes.
Anybody that tries to defend that is is laughable.
Yeah, so you want to be very careful about breaching a non-disclosure agreement because you're going to go be a whistleblower. Some whistleblowers have a very short life.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, so let me ask you this. What do you see, and you hate me asking you this, ladies and gentlemen, Denise Simon does not like to be asked to does not like that. I'm about the only person that I know that can actually get away with it sometimes. Denise, what do you see happening with this?
Well, I think at some point, because we have a very different Department of Justice now, that we have a better chance of some legal consequences with a Jeff Sessions Department of Justice and a Christopher Wray FBI than we had anytime going through the Obama administration and all of those people. Now, what those consequences could necessarily be, some people could literally go to jail. And I would argue that those that could necessarily go to jail would be the underlings, because the other people would cut a deal. And that deal would say, you put me on 10 years probation and I'll cough up $20 million and we'll just call it a day. And sometimes that might be the best you can get, because you just don't have all the legal resources and enough attorneys to go after all these people. If Hillary Clinton and the CFIUS, which is the Committee for Foreign Investment in the United States on the Uranium One deal, I mean, let's not forget that dealt with Eric Holder, that dealt with Hillary Clinton, that dealt with Tim Geithner. You see what I'm saying? There was like 12 people on that committee. So you would have to, and all of those people, if they knew about it and they did something wrong, then they're going to have to pay a fine. They're going to get put on probation. But I don't know that some of those big names would ever go to jail. It would just be some kind of they freeze their assets or, remove their passports and, that kind of stuff. Some of the underlings.
What about potential vindication for Trump?
Well, I would say he might have some real vindication here, although we don't know the depths of what Robert Mueller is finding with what Trump did at the Trump organization. He had some pretty nefarious people on his payroll, least of which was Paul Manafort, and the other one was Felix Sater.
Do you think Manafort's going to do time?
Yes, and that was predicted about 2 or 3 weeks ago that he will do time.
What kind of time?
I have no idea.
What do we think there? I mean, are we looking, put him away, throw away the key? I mean, how old is the guy?
No. He might get 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they might ask for 10 and the judge gives them 3. We don't know. But what I can tell you, the bigger part of all of this diatribe that I've been on is this. We have a Russian problem. We have a Russian problem, obviously, with some ties to Trump. Not all nefarious. We have some major Russian ties with Uranium One and Hillary. But we also have the other Russian ties because they did interfere. They did do ads in Facebook and Twitter. They you know what I'm saying? They did troll the United States. We have spies that walk up and down the streets of probably every major city. including San Francisco, including New York. We've got Russian mafia. So my point is, we don't know how big a Russian problem we have, because I'm not convinced even the officials know that are tracking these people. The Russians love to come to the United States to plant their dirty money, and they do it successfully, and they do it under covers of layers of companies and buy real estate. I know I've probably posted 2 or 3 articles of buying big, huge real estate in Miami and New York, and somebody's living in that unit on the 21st floor, but there's no name to the deed. We don't know who it is. And the same thing, they do the same kind of money laundering.
And they could be in Trump Tower.
Exactly. But they do the same thing in Britain, in London. The exact same thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the next time you're in Miami Beach, and you got some guy that's over there in his Speedo, I guarantee you he's from someplace in St. Petersburg or Moscow. He's a dirty Russian that is there under an assumed name, living in a piece of real estate that nobody knows that he essentially owns, because it's got 19 layers of names and companies and front operations to it.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you've just had about 50 minutes of nonstop, with the occasional interruption on my part, from Denise Simon discussing the dossier and its relationship to Trump, Hillary Clinton, the DNC, and all of the little nefarious players that have been involved in that. I would like to encourage you to trot over to Denise's website, Founders Code, and that's founder with an S, founderscode.com. She probably, on average, I'll see maybe 5 or 6 articles a day come through my inbox. You can sign up for her newsletter, and it'll just come to you in an email. Whenever she's finished an article, boom, it shows up. Let's take a minute, Denise, and thank our affiliates, TalkAmericaRadio.us, Ron Phillips, and all of the other fine hosts that are on our network. That's our digital flagship. We've also got some terrestrial or AM/FM radio stations that carry this show to you. Scott James and Jack Ring down at Talk 92.1 FM, WDDQ. That's serving South Georgia. WJHC 107.5, serving North Florida. And WLBB, Steve Graddick and his team at WLBB 1330 AM and 106.3 FM, serving West Georgia. We sure do appreciate the fact that all of you people believe in us enough to put us on your radio stations when you could be airing, say, a rerun of Sean Hannity or Michael Savage. Thank you. We don't take this lightly. Now, Denise, before we close, I need to talk about something that's very sad, very serious, and I hope that I've got the listeners' attention on this because I need it. This past weekend, ladies and gentlemen, Ron Phillips and his family, Ron is the founder, the owner, the CEO, the manager, the operations manager, the programming director. He is the heartbeat of Talk America Radio, our digital flagship that brings you 60 conservative talk shows every week. This past weekend, he and his family experienced a devastating tragedy. And that was that on Saturday night, their home was hit with a direct hit by a lightning bolt. And it set the house on fire, destroyed the roof. There was massive water damage, massive fire damage, massive smoke damage. And then the fire department shows up, and they've got to obviously put this thing out and do whatever they can to salvage as much of this house as they can. They add to the water damage, obviously. Well, Talk America Radio was housed in this home. All of the servers, all of the broadcast equipment, all of the software, computers. I talked to Ron this morning, and if I'm not mistaken, I think he told me that to operate Talk America Radio, he had 6 computers running at the same time. They were all damaged. Now, I'd like to ask you to consider going to the Talk America Radio website. You can find that at talkamericaradio.us. This is a listener-supported conservative talk radio network. You can click on a button on that website and you can donate money to it. It's not tax deductible. It's not a 501c3 or C4 nonprofit organization. But I can tell you this, for the past year and a half, Ron Phillips has devoted his time unselfishly. Is that the right word that I'm trying to search for, Denise?
Yes.
All right. I mean, I'm shooting from the hip here, ladies and gentlemen. I'm driving while I'm talking about this. I'm not using a script. He has devoted his time. He has devoted his money. He has devoted his resources and his talents. He's an IT guy. And he spends hours and hours and hours every day running this network so that you guys can enjoy the kind of programming that you enjoy. He helps the show hosts like nothing I've ever seen before. Mm-hmm. Nothing. There are show hosts that are on Talk America Radio that have left other internet radio networks, some of which you already know about, and they've left there because of the huge difference that Ron Phillips makes. He also provides all of the overnight programming that goes out to the terrestrial stations, DDQ, JHC, LBB. That's the guy that's the heartbeat of what you're listening to right now. I'm asking you to consider donating money to the network to help him rebuild it after this devastation hit. Yeah, yes, he has homeowners insurance. Are they going to come through quick enough so that we can get this network back up and running again? Probably not. Now, there's a GoFundMe account that his brother set up. You can find it on my Facebook page if you want to go to it. Go find Don Neuen. It's on my wall someplace. And Denise, I'm going to bring a little bit of warmth to your heart here about this story when I tell you that the last time I looked, he's someplace between $3,000 and $4,000 that have been dumped into this GoFundMe account. People are appreciating what Ron Phillips has done, and they care about his family. So having said that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like for you please to find a way, if it's $10, if it's $100, if it's $1,000. Got some money that you can part with to help out somebody that has been devoted to providing you, the listener, with a wonderful product 24/7. I'd like to ask for you to consider helping out. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, Denise, I'm going to have you, because we're over time, we got to get out of here. Denise, give us your signature departure.
Well, yeah, and I would say that he is limitless in his generosity, too. But thanks for being with us. God bless America, and we'll see you again soon.